we are again. It's the Open Door webinar show. A very warm welcome to you this evening. My name is Richie Clapson, and of course I'm here with the other half, the co-founder of propertyCEO, Mr. Ian Child. Do you want to say good evening, Ian?
Good evening. Good to have you here.
Absolutely. It is good to have you here. Look, it's great to have you with us as always. And over the next 45 minutes, what are we going to be doing? Well, we'll be taking a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
It most certainly is. We're going to be covering some of the latest news items and talking to some of the movers and shakers in the wonderful world of property and property development. Also shining the spotlight on some areas where there might be a good opportunity for new developers to take a look at. Yeah, got a great 45 minutes in prospect.
Now, even if we say so ourselves, it is going to be good. But above all, we say this every show. Look, we're here to have a bit of fun doing it. Life is definitely far too short not to. Lots going on in the world, but within these four walls of these next 45 minutes, we're going to have a bit of a laugh, we're going to have a bit of fun, we're going to lighten the mood of whatever's going on in your world right now. But we need you to join in. I can see you're out there. I can see you've all logged on, and we need you to join in. Otherwise, we're just going to talk to you. We're going to talk to the camera, but we need to know you're out there. We need some reaction. We're emotional beings as well. We need that stimulation, okay? So please, questions and our answers, put them, or any comments, whatever you want. You can be a bit cheeky if you want, a bit rude. Sometimes we get that. Then put it in the chat box. Say whatever you want, and we will try and do our best to answer questions. Ian, what have we got coming up this evening?
Well, we've got a planning update for you. So we've got the rather wonderful Mr. Colin Smith, our UK planning expert. Lots of things happening in the world of planning, and he's going to give us an update on what's been going on. And yeah, hopefully maybe a few golden nuggets that we can put to good use. So yeah, Colin will be joining us very shortly.
I don't know, he might have a couple of golden nuggets. He might have Googled something at lunchtime. You just don't know, do you, with Colin? He might have come up with something. Anyway, give us a wave if you can see and hear us. Give us a wave, please, if you can see and hear us. Put your hands up. No one did that. I thought that was going to be quite amusing. Good stuff. It's good to see you all on here. It's good to know that you can hear us, otherwise we'll be babbling away. Hands are going down now, so don't put them up anymore. Let's see who's on. Salman's on, Pardeep's on, Patrick's on, Ricky's on, Ranjit's on, Mike's on, Vicky's on, Dan's on, Patrick's on, Roma's on, good evening, John's on, Cheryl's on, David's on, good evening, David, Doral, Sue, Debs. I mean, I can't mention all names. Someone said the other week, I saw someone at the National Annual Investor Show. They said, oh, I was on the other week. You never mentioned my name. I can't go through all the names. I mean, I can have a go. Harjinder's on, Monifa's on, Sarah's on, but you know, I just can't do it. I can't do it. A good evening, Property CEO, says Ranjit Singh from Property Investor News. That's a good magazine, isn't it? And we like that one.
It is, although he did blank me the other day. So, but it's good to have you here, Ranjit.
He never did he?
Unbelievable, yeah.
Outrageous, Ranjit. Great magazine. We write in that every month. I mean, we don't actually have an article, but we just get it and we make notes. But yeah, we're in it every month, so please grab that. Good evening, gents. Looking sharp. Oh, thanks, Dan. Well, we normally do, to be fair. Want to brush yourself up a little bit and match our standards, maybe. Good evening, says John. Helen says, hi, Richie and Ian. You both look well. We are well. We absolutely are well. And Angel says, hello, chaps. Hello. And we start now. We've got questions coming in. Questions already. You know, would love to ask whether B1 is PD, please. Well, you can ask in a minute. We will pick up that question. So, Ian, we've got a few news items before we see if Colin's around to come on the show.
We have. Here they are. There we go. So the first one is about planning, funny enough. And it's about the planning bill, the long-awaited planning bill. We've all been on tenterhooks for. So just another kind of update, a mild update. The permanent secretary for the Department of Levelling Up and loads of other words, Jeremy Pocklington, basically was in front of a committee this week and basically, yeah, confirmed that the government's dropping its plans for the standalone planning bill, which you may remember was fairly unpopular in many quarters. And it also, so we're expecting it to come, I think, in the Queen's speech, where there will be an announcement about some kind of levelling up legislation, and they're going to sneak it in there. He also said that that they're going to struggle to hit the annual target of 300,000 homes, which frankly doesn't make a massive change from what's gone on in the past, but at least he sort of fessed up to it. They're on track to build 244,000 this year, apparently. So I guess must try harder next year. But let's see what the planning, what's left of the planning bill makes it through into the levelling up legislation. An interesting one here in what's this, Property Investor Today, levelling up. Do you like a bit of a segue there? Levelling up could boost UK housing market by 58 billion. So basically, the government's plans to level up parts of the country, so we've got this sort of a bit of an even playing field, allegedly, is going to be adding lots of value onto the places where it's happening. So some of the key areas look to be places such as Birmingham, Gloucestershire, Edinburgh, Leeds, Derbyshire apparently is top, where properties, because of the levelling up, because of the investment that's going in locally, going to push prices up in those areas, but to the extent of 58 billion, which yeah, it's quite a lot. And then the final one that I found, which is probably the biggest news actually, in many respects, an estate agent has been slammed for telling people to give up Greggs to save for a house deposit. Absolutely outrageous. Basically saying that if you spend £5 at Greggs every morning, that's £35 a week, 1680 a year, £5,000 for 3 years, 8,400 after 5 years. So go without your Greggs every morning, and you could save up your deposit after 5 years. And it says, there was a quote here from somebody that responded that said, "Chill out, Greggs is my only source of happiness," they added. Didn't put your name, Rich, but yeah, so there we go. So I don't know if that's how hard that's going to hit Greggs, but if you need bigger deposits, yeah, give up your chicken slice. There you go. That's the news.
You see, you take the mick out of me. You do that all the time, and I know the audience here, our audience of CEOs, feel for me because you take the mick out of me all the time. But I think it's important that other people notice it. You know, they're just as wasted that comment about me being in Greggs. People know that I don't go to Greggs because there's a comment here from Doral. Doral says, "Richie, it's a long time no see. Looking good with your weight loss." Thank you, Doral. Friend for life. You're on my Christmas card list now. Okay, enough of this messing around, this pathetic behaviour that's going on. Evening, thank you for the news. Ian, thanks for the news. It was brilliant. I think if this show ever bombs, I'm definitely going to give you a recommendation for news at 10. You would be superb. You would be superb.
Thank you very much.
Should we get our guest on? I
think we should.
So this is going to be Colin Smith. He is, I mean, what Colin doesn't know about planning is, it's quite a bit, to be fair, actually. I think it's quite a bit that he doesn't know, in which case you should put questions in the chat box and try and catch him out. What we do know about Colin Smith is he was available, to be fair. He was available this evening. And for us, it's important. If someone's available, yeah, we'll book them on the show because I think that's good. But joking aside, he does know his stuff. He does work very closely with us here. He's part of our consultant team for our students. So let's see if Colin, after that great build-up, that warm introduction, is available. Colin, are you there?
Yes, good evening, everybody. And how rude, honestly.
Pop your camera on, Colin. I don't know what you're saying. What do you mean, how rude?
Well, hang on. Where am I? Am I there?
You're on.
Yeah, here I am. Hello. Well, you know, I thought I knew a little bit here and there about planning, but, you know, obviously you've got other ideas. I shall prove you wrong. We shall see.
Give us a thumbs up. Give us a hands up if you can see and hear Colin. See and hear Colin. Give us a wave. Yes, they can. I do apologise, Colin. It's Ian that put me up to that introduction, and you know what I think of you, Colin. You know that I think you're the best.
Yeah, right. Okay. Moving swiftly along. Should we get started?
Absolutely. Colin,
okay.
Obviously there'll be some people that don't know you, so perhaps you could give a bit of an introduction of who you are, what your business is. We'll put Colin's details in the chat box at the end, and Colin's going to very kindly tonight give us a bit of an update of what's going on in the world of planning. I think it could be quite interesting. So, Colin, let's go for it.
Okay, let's go for it. Totally unprompted and unscripted. I'm Colin Smith. I am a planning consultant. I've been doing it for over a third of a century, which actually makes me very, very old indeed. You know, I'm basically well known in the network, the property network circles, as the guy who does all the PD stuff. PD, incidentally, means permitted development for you guys that don't know what that means. And talk about segues from Ian, that leads us nicely on to a bit of news that came about in February, and it's all to do with a very important court case. Now, for any of you guys that have recently made a planning application, you're probably of the opinion, like most, that the planning system is in fact not very well. It's broken right now. You know, it's taking such a long time to get approvals. We're finding that the planning officers are basically under-resourced, and they're just not, you know, getting around to doing the job properly, in my humble opinion. There's lots of planning officers out there, and local authorities obviously that are, but you know, they're a bit, how can I say, a bit thin on the ground. So, you know, planning permission basically is not as easy as it should be. Now, it's basically the planning officer's job to compare your scheme or proposals against local planning rules and policies, but their decision is often an opinion and may not always be as objective as we would like. So we then turn to this thing called permitted development. And what permitted development is basically is the right to develop. That means build stuff or change the use of stuff without the need for a formal planning application, because you've in effect been given permission by something called the General Permitted Development Order, which is basically like an act of parliament. And as long as you can tick all the right boxes, then you should get approved. You say you should. In certain circumstances that can be a bit controversial, but the idea is basically like a planning permission light, if you like, to make the whole process a lot easier and a lot more clean. But permitted development has been dealt a little bit of a blow, I'm afraid to say, and we've got a little bit of bad news. But you know me, always look for the silver lining, and I've found a little bit of very, very good news. Now,
you're going to tell us, Colin, that there's some bad news, but you almost certainly, because Colin is a master at this, you will have found, you'd have been up late at night looking for the loopholes out of the bad news to give us some good news. Am I right?
Exactly that. We have got some beauty of loopholes, and I'm going to tease you as to what those loopholes might be. Now, PD's been around since 1948, and we absolutely love it simply because there's no assessment of local planning policies, okay? The National Planning Policy Framework is involved, but basically it's not being judged by local policy. So like I say, as long as you tick those boxes, you should get approved. I say you should, that's a controversial point, okay? Now, we've had some major updates, and I've talked about this ad nauseum in the past. I mean, we've had these huge changes to the use classes, whereby all the old use classes have all been lumped together in what I call a new super use class called Class E. And subsequently for that, we've also updated the permitted development rights as well that incorporate this use Class E. So for example, you can turn, I don't know, doctors' surgeries and gyms, restaurants, professional services, office space, and even good old retail, they all now have various different permutations by which you can turn those into residential, which, let's face it, that's what it's all about at the moment. We're trying to find old commercial uses and to turn them into resi, usually flats, but sometimes you can do houses as well. Now, here's the thing, okay? There's been 7 ways in which you can add airspace extensions onto existing buildings, okay? You probably heard about these. I won't go through them all, it's a bit boring, but there's 7 of them. And it's basically a pick and mix whereby you can take a bit of this and a bit of that, you can daisy chain it together and make something which is half useful, okay? And developers and so on have been really jumping on the bandwagon, saying how great it is that we can now add additional stories onto existing buildings, and in one particular case you can actually demolish a building and start again. But like I said, I'm not here to go through all of that in any detail. The point is this, is that way back when all these new use classes, permitted development classes came in, which was the 31st of August 2020, that's when they actually came in. We all thought, this is brilliant, we can now actually do something which is really useful. Okay, so what's the bad news? Well, the bad news is this, is that there's been a court case, and this court case, I'm just going to get the thing up here, is an important court ruling. It's called CAB Housing, that's CAB, CAB Housing Limited versus the Secretary of State. Now, it actually involves 3 very high-profile appeals. All 3 of those appeals were refused by the respective local authorities. They're different councils, and all 3 went to appeal, and the inspectors in all 3 cases also refused. Okay, so these wily old developers took their cases to the High Court. And on the 3rd of February, there's been quite, how can I say, a very important ruling. Now, some of you may have heard this, me talk about this in the past, whereby it's very, very important that you must read what the legislation actually says and not what you think it says. And this happens time and time again, okay? The last big time, well, important time that this happened was when they very slightly changed the wording for agricultural to residential conversions, something called Class Q back in the day, about 3-4 years ago now, I believe, from memory. And they changed a vital little word from and to an or. And the or gave you a choice, whereas the and was basically like a supplementary thing that you could do. And me, being a planning consultant who absolutely loves loopholes, this was very good. I like the or bit. Now, this is what's happened now, okay? We've got a similar situation, okay? And the judge is actually right. We must read what it actually says in the legislation and not what we think it says. And they've been, in the new airspace extensions, the new rules, okay, it actually gives you a list of stuff that you've got to look out for, all right? And there's a very vital word in all of the legislation. And the vital word is this. The word is including. The word is including. So therefore, as an example, by a reference, okay, you've got a whole list of stuff that you must abide by to get your approval, but it includes something. Now, on its own, you think, well, so does that matter? Well, actually it does, because if you take the literal meaning of including, it means that you are in effect making a list. And that list is not bound by the boundaries of the legislation. It is basically a list that can be compiled by whoever's making the decision. So what does that mean in layman's terms? It means that it's basically open season now. A planning officer, when assessing your airspace extensions, can now say, no, basically it has a negative character impact, it affects surrounding buildings and so on and so on. Whereas before, we thought it basically just was the building itself was being assessed, but now we've got to look at everything because it's including, okay? So we had examples whereby you could basically take a terrace of houses, okay, and the guy in the middle, under the old understanding, would be able to put an extra story on the top. Well, no, you can't. The likelihood is that that will now be refused. If you've got yourself a nice old office block that you're wanting to add a couple of stories onto the top of it, okay, are you likely to get approval now? No, you're not, because it's most likely going to have a negative impact, a subjective view, if you like, a negative impact on its neighbours. And this is a really, really important ruling. And basically, in my humble opinion, it completely wipes out all the advantages of the airspace extensions, because the whole idea is that it's supposed to streamline the planning process. It's supposed to make things faster, quicker, more efficient, but all it's actually done is given all the power of assessment back to the planning department, because it's up to them now and they can look at it in a subjective manner. So that's the bad news. But what's the good news? Well, the good news is this.
Let's have the good news, Colin. Let's have some good news.
Not doom and gloom. Right. Well, the good news is this, is that, like I said earlier, it's been a well-established part of law that we must look at what it actually says and not what we think it says. So somebody like me, who's a bit of a geek looking at all the different rules and regulations, you realise that the permitted development rights, and there's hundreds of them, okay, are actually really badly written. So if you take them as they are actually written and how you interpret them, it gives you a lot of very, very loopholes. So or even very good loopholes. So whereas airspace extensions have been, I think, well, it's a backward step. You know, it's going to be very, very hard. You might as well just put in a planning application, quite frankly. But it opens up the opportunity for other permitted development classes. Now, you guys at All right, and we're also aware that we are quite often hamstrung by the national space standards. Okay, you cannot build under 37 square meters and so on and so on and so on. Right, here, well, here's the good news. We all knew that Class G gives you 2 flats above a shop or a commercial use. Agreed? Right. Well, now, because of the way that it's written, I've now driven a coach and horses through that legislation, and I can basically put as many flats in there as I like because of the way it's written, and more will be shared at a later date, no doubt. And the same thing happens with Class MA as well. There are limits to what you can do, and one of the things that is difficult about Class MA is that there are much stricter standards regarding natural light. And when Richie does his assessments and so on with his clients and his students, one of the things that often trips them up is the problem of natural light into the building when you're converting. Okay, well, here's a little clue. Read the actual legislation, what it says, okay, not what you think it says. And in my humble opinion, natural light is no longer that much of a problem. It doesn't completely go away, but I tell you what, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier. And what about all the buildings that can't quite get those flats because the building's not quite big enough? Okay, we know that flats have to be 37 square meters, don't we? Well, what if you've only got 30? That means it rules out having a flat. Or if you've only got 70 square meters, that means you can't have 2 flats, right? Well, guess what? There's a big old hole in the national space standards as well, whereby we can do something, which I haven't got time to share, unfortunately, whereby you can actually squeeze that extra few square meterage to meet that standard of 37. So, yes, it was bad news with this court case, but it's just reinforced the fact that we must read what is actually written and not what we think we're written. And because of that, it's now opened up a huge raft of new opportunities with permitted development. And believe it or not, I've actually counted up, there are now 15 things that you can now do without the need for a planning application. There are 7 very handy hacks for extensions and 8 clever ways to change the use of a building to residential, and all using permitted development, and also thanks to that judge and the court case. So there you are. That's the news. That's the up-to-date. I think I've run out of time. I don't think I'm able to elucidate any more on this.
Colin, that's brilliant. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. And look, folks, I know you probably want all the detail. We've highlighted today. We would be here probably for a good couple of hours or so.
Be here for a week.
Yeah, I know this doesn't help you all out there, but those of you that are students of ours, as you know, Colin, very much works closely with us. Those of you, and I can see a few of you that are coming to our Developers Club next week. So part of what we do for all of our graduate students, they all have an opportunity to follow on and join our Developers Club. Colin is with us next week, folks, at the Developers Club on Tuesday at our meeting, and we will be able to dive into some of that detail next week, won't we, Colin? We'll have more time to do that.
Definitely. And actually, I've got some slides coming along as well that you'll be able to take away and study. And we'll probably have some live examples as well.
Good stuff. So for you folks that's coming next week, the Developers Club, that's great. For all you other people that aren't students of ours, shame on you. Shame on you. But look, hopefully that's helpful. I mean, this is what we like about Colin is, and all consultants that are creative is, okay, there's some bad news here, but let's see what the upside is. Let's see where the loopholes are and where the good news is. That's brilliant. Colin, are you up to take a few questions?
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, folks, look, please keep popping your questions in the chat box. We're going to get as many questions answered as we can. So we're far away. I can see quite a lot have come in. We're never going to get through all of these. Ian, do you want to kick us off with something? So this is great because Ian's actually muted, which is good, but it does make it difficult. Ian, it makes it really difficult to understand the question. So have another go.
Let me have another go. So we've got one here from Helen, who came in with an early question. Hi, Richie. No, it's where it's gone. It's would love to ask you whether B1 is permitted development, please. What can we do with B1, Colin?
You can turn B1, which is office use, which is more like a clerical office use, okay, and you can turn that to residential. B1 is now under this new super class I was talking about, Class E. And anything which comes under Class E as a use class, we can now utilise permitted development rights to create flats, and in some cases, you can actually change it into houses as well. So yes, you can do. There are some stipulations. There's always conditions and limitations to what you can and can't do. But generally speaking, yeah, you can.
Fantastic. There you go. Good news. More good news. Rishi.
Yes.
Good. Okay, Sammy's question for Colin, which is great. I love it when they say question for Colin, as opposed to question for the guest that was on a few weeks ago. Question for Colin. Colin, which in your view is the easiest PD right to work with?
To do what? Create
Well,
I suppose.
I'm going to assume, Sammy, conversion of commercial to residential in some way. So I think you've probably mentioned them, but what would you suggest?
I would suggest, it's a bit rude, but I always call Class G the G spot in permitted development. It's absolutely wonderful. It actually rings all the right bells, and now it's been enhanced a little while ago to a prior notification, and now there's this massive loophole in it as well. So, and incidentally, I've been talking about these loopholes. This isn't just me saying, oh yes, I found this and that. I've actually done the loopholes, okay? But what is important is that this court case basically, if you like, reinforces that. So whenever a planning officer in the future says, oh no, you can't, I say, oh yes, I can. It's because it's been underlined by this particular court case. So when I'm talking about all these loopholes and hacks, this isn't just me just, you know, spouting hot air. I've actually done them, and I can prove it.
Good stuff. Colin mentioned G-Spot there. This is a family show for all the children that are listening. That's just something we don't know anything about. So no, sorry, I can't help you any further on that one.
It's a complete mystery to us blokes.
Ian, what have you got next?
Follow that. Okay, we've got a question here from Doral. Good evening, Doral. Hi, Colin and the A-team. To add value to semi-detached and detached houses, how easy is it to add two-story extensions on either side of the rear of a house? What do you think to that, Colin?
Two-story rear extensions are permitted development on a dwelling house. The main restriction there is that the eaves, all right, where the gutter is, can't be more than 3 meters high off the ground where it's within 2 meters of a boundary. Now that's the restriction. So therefore, a two-story rear extension. Actually, it's not two-story. It's actually multi-story. Another loophole for you. They're tricky to do on terraces because terraces are too narrow, and you can't be more than 2 meters away from the boundary of a terrace, can you? Well, you can. Again, there's another trick to that, but I'll go into that another day. But it's fairly straightforward. Okay, it's not a prior notification. You just got to make sure that you comply with the various rules. Yeah, the answer is yes, it is straightforward, but there are rules to comply with.
Fantastic. Talk to your friendly planning consultant, Doral.
Yeah.
That was a great answer. Richard.
Here we go. Colin, based on what you have said about PDR rights, would you suggest that we avoid this build-up PD right altogether? Ask Gary.
No, not altogether, but the way that it's now falling, there's just as much work to try and appease the planning legislation or the permitted development right legislation as there would be to actually putting a planning application. There's no real advantage. I would say it's going to be more applicable where you've got a high street situation and the roofscape, okay, goes up and down, and you're trying to raise a building that is in between two other, well, a building either side, which are two or more stories taller than you. In London,
if you've got some buildings higher on either side and you're lower in the middle, yeah, it can probably work.
Exactly that. Okay, but if you're trying to take a terrace and then add an extra two stories on a corner or something like that, I think it's extremely unlikely now that you will get approval, because you wouldn't have got approval necessarily with a planning application to do that. And the whole idea of the PD stuff was to actually circumvent the planning problems. But there you go. You've got to read what it actually says, not what you think it says.
Gary, there we go. Hopefully that helps. Looks like Jenny and Roman just turned up. Sorry to be late, but Roman and I are here now. Oh, well, that's okay. Jenny, Roman, we were going to hold the whole show till you got here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They just turned up at 7:30. Can you believe that? It's a 7 o'clock start, Colin. They turned up at 7:30.
I don't know. Can't get the staff.
Shocking. Well, you can. They're just no good. Jenny and Roman, that's unbelievable. You'll be reprimanded for that. Ian, what's the next question?
We've got one here from Sarah. Good evening, Sarah. Do local planning authorities have to respond in a certain amount of time? I think I read something about 56 days. And if they don't, what happens next?
Right. Where a permitted development application is made is something called prior approval. I won't go into the detail of it, but it's basically like discharging a condition. You know, you shall do the X, Y, and Z, and you've got to discharge that to allow you to actually carry on and physically build it. Now, again, the whole idea of streamlining the process was that the legislation gives you 56 days in which to get an actual answer from the local authority. In actual fact, it's not 56, it's actually 57 because it's 1 day after the 56 days. And it doesn't require an application to be validated. Okay, it just needs to be received, and being received, it means all your plans and the fee. Okay, so once it's hit the inbox of your local authority, the clock starts ticking. Okay, now on your 57th day, if they haven't actually said yes or no to your application, then you actually get it by default. It gets approved by default. Okay, now there's always a caveat. They can now ask for an extension of time. So at the 55th day, you'll get an email, which you don't see because it was sent at midnight, to say, you know, can we extend it, please, for another fortnight? And, you know, and if you say no, that's, oh, well, we'll refuse you anyway then. So, you know, but strictly speaking, 56 days. On the 57th day, if you've not had a response to say it's been approved or otherwise, then it gets approved by default. There you go.
Superb. Sarah, hope that helps. Richie.
Dee's question here tonight. This is a good one. I like this sort of question. So do you think as a potential new developer, so Dee's obviously thinking of getting into development. So Dee, you're in the right place. So do you think as a potential new developer, we should go for a new build and planning or a conversion of existing building using this PD right approach?
Ooh.
So a new developer, should we go for, so as a new developer, should they go for a bit of land and try and get planning permission, or is it easier to get an existing building and convert it in one of the permitted development rights? What do you say, Colin?
I think that the phrase is go for the low-hanging fruit. Go for the least line of resistance, go for the easiest one. Cut your teeth, your developer teeth, on Class G, okay? Permitted development right, get yourself a nice little shop with a little bit of storage or something above it, and go down the permitted development right, make yourself a few quid, get a couple of flats out of it, actually more than a couple of flats now, but I'll tell you about that another time. And it's a fairly straightforward way of doing it. Now, once you've done that, then you can put your big boy pants on and then start doing developments and actually developing bits of land and so on, okay? But there are plenty of guys out there who actually say, yes, you can start developments, you know, from day one. It's about getting your team together and everything else. But there's a huge amount to learn, to be honest with you. And, you know, like I say, cut your teeth on something easy. Go for the low-hanging fruit. Start off with Class G, progress up to Class MA, find yourself a couple of barns to convert with Class Q, and then go and find yourself a plot of land and build a housing estate. Do it in that order.
Stuff. I'd 90% agree with Colin, but you know, I wouldn't even bother with the housing estate at the end. Providing PD rights are there, I'd still keep using them because it's I would say the path of least resistance, which is exactly the same as the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So we're all on the same song sheet, Colin. Good stuff. Ian, what's next?
I should also point out that big girl pants are also available. We've got one from John. Evening, gents. Evening, John. Evening, gents. I'm looking at an office opportunity that I think might be interesting under Class MA. However, it is in the conservation area. Would that mean that the facade cannot be altered under permitted development, and so it would need full planning permission?
No. What it means under Class MA, Class MA replaced Class M. I mean, the creatively named Class MA superseded Class M. Good old government. Class M in the old days, you couldn't do anything in a conservation area, but Class MA, which is the new boy on the block, you can. But what they're interested in with Class MA is that if it's in a conservation area, they're interested in how does it negatively impact on the character. Okay, so you can imagine a nice conservation area, got a nice little high street there, and you go shop, 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 thatched cottage, shop, shop, shop. Obviously, it's not going to look very good and it won't be in keeping. So the trick there in a conservation area, even if it's an office, okay, is to try and keep an element of the front looking a bit like it did originally, okay? That's effectively what that means. Don't try and do anything outlandish in a conservation area, because the good old planning officer will say he doesn't like it and throw it out. Cut your teeth on something that's not in a conservation area to start off with, perhaps, but you can do it, but just keep the facade the same.
Fantastic, great answer. There we go, John. Richie, over to you.
Okay, Vanda's question. This is a nice simple one, Colin. Can you appeal a refusal of a prior approval application?
Absolutely.
There we go, Vanda. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. As soon as I did that one quick, am I allowed another one in?
Go on then.
Jin's question. Jin says, are these permitted development rights all standalone, or can you add them together to get more of the building converted? Well, I think you did mention that earlier, Colin. You talked about daisy chaining. Do you just want to say that again?
Yeah, that's my little terminology. You can chain permitted developments rights together. Now, the tricky bit, the skill, is to understand where you are right now and where you want to be, and work out the various steps in the strategy to get to where you want to be. Timing and the correct steps are vital, and you can't just give a vanilla answer as to what the best steps would be. Every single, well, not every single, but the vast majority of projects will be entirely different. The locations are different, the characters are different, what you're trying to achieve could be different, but there is usually a way of overcoming it, and that's why we love permitted development. There is usually a way, if you know what you're doing, where you can daisy chain the various rights together to get to where you want to be. It's very rare that is not the case.
There you go, Jin. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's see if we can squeeze a few more. Are we getting quite a few of these done, actually? I'm surprised. There is, folks, I do realise there is a whole stack of questions on really popular tonight. Colin always is. But let's keep going and see how many we can get through. Ian.
Yeah.
I got one here from Carol. Good evening, Carol. What's the real benefit of Class G? Isn't it better to always use MA? I am not sure I know the difference between them, because I think they apply to the same types of building.
Okay, in short, I said how much I love Class G. The big advantage over Class G is that there's no timestamp requirement. Okay, now what I mean by that is with Class MA, it had to be in use for 2 years prior to the application, and it needs to be vacant for 3 months prior to the application. Doesn't necessarily have to be vacant after the application's been made, incidentally, another loophole, but that timestamp stipulation doesn't apply to Class G. And that's why we love it. It's an instant thing. You can get on with it straight away, subject to getting your conditions and limitations signed off. So, and also because of this little loophole I've been alluding to, you're not just restricted to 2 flats now.
Amazing, fantastic. And more good news. Carol, great answer.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we got a question from Raz. Funny enough, we actually had this question today on a training session we were doing.
Not Mr. Raz Sheik, is it?
Well, we never read out surnames, but no, it's not. Okay.
Good.
Well, I'm looking down the list. They're not registered as that. So Raz is not registered as Raz Sheik. So whoever that is, no, it's not that, not them.
I made it up.
Oh, right, okay. But the question, let's get to the question. Stop messing around. Do you have to provide parking under permitted development right schemes?
Oh, what an excellent question. Yes and no. Under Class MA, they're more interested in safe access. Now, most commercial uses do have an element of parking, and you basically can support a permitted development application if the connectivity or the sustainability, as it's called, can be justified. So if you're close to a train station, bus stops, blah, 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 and easy walking distance to facilities and services, then you don't need to worry about cars and car parking. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, then probably you would, okay? And it's a much more complex answer to that. So to be honest with you, it's a yes and a no answer. Okay, that's the thing. It all depends on the location of the property. But Class MA is more interested in access rather than parking. Yeah, that's about as deep as I can go.
No worries. Good stuff, Colin. Thank you. Ian, let's get another one in.
We've got one here from Jenny and Rowan. Good evening. The potential development we have seen tonight, so this is their excuse for being late, is a children's nursery. They're closing down and retiring. Presumably the owners, not the children. I understand that this might be classed as a loss of an asset to the community. How can I check this out?
An ACV, an asset of community value. It has to be nominated by usually it's like the local parish council. And they write into the local authority and basically fill out a form to try and protect a building. It usually applies to pubs, but basically it can apply to anything which is a community use. So a nursery or a hall, you know, like a community hall or something like that. To try and get round an ACV, you really need very robust marketing evidence to show that it's no longer actually wanted. But that's a topic for an afternoon, quite honestly. But how do you check it? It should be actually available on the council website. Council websites are written in such a way that you can't navigate them. So use Google, okay? So you put in the name of your council and then say asset of community value and put that in quotes, okay? And it should hopefully directly to the page, because to try and find that just by trying to navigate a council website I think be a bit tortuous to say the least. But that's how I would do it anyway. Or give them a call.
Can I just ask, Colin, if you put the application in and it's not currently an ACV, can they then make it an ACV after you've made your application?
It takes quite a while. I doubt whether it'll go through within the stipulated 56 days. So
there we go.
Yeah, could it or couldn't it? Planning legislation needs to be dealt with at the time of the application. So potentially, yes, if an ACV reared its ugly head halfway through, you could be on a sticky wicket.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've got to do a bit of Googling, Jenny and Roman.
Bit of Googling, yeah.
Rich.
A bit of Googling in our world, don't we? Okay, we're going to do one more question and a bit of a luck of the draw. I'm going to pick Mikey's question. So apologies for all the others that's in there. There's so many questions in tonight, Colin, you wouldn't believe it. But Mikey's question, are PD rights that you talk about across all UK and Ireland? Question mark.
England and bits of Wales.
So if I had to follow up, which Mikey might ask, what happens in Wales then, and what happens in Scotland?
Scotland has a different set of legislation, which I am not au fait with, and same with Wales, really. But the legislation, the PD legislation, is specifically about England.
Correct. Something I have heard, Mikey, and this might help, that I've heard a few times that Northern Ireland particularly, and perhaps some areas of Wales, are sympathetic to the UK, to the English PD rights, and will take them into account in their deliberation. It is a planning, but they will be slightly sympathetic to a scheme that maybe, if it was in England, would actually comply. I said, but that's just there's nothing in writing to confirm that. Brilliant. Colin, okay. We've loved that. Give us a hands up if you've loved that this evening, if you've enjoyed the session with Colin. Lots of hands going up. It's great, isn't it? It is good. And I know we could sit here. You'd love us to sit here. You'd love to ask Colin questions until the early hours and the sun would be rising. Not that you'd see it in our studios. But Colin, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
If people want to contact you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Email, really. Did you? Well, they'll contact you. All right. Let's make the law of reciprocity. Is it? I don't know what it's called. If they contact you first, that you've got all my contact details. That's the easiest way.
Well, what we'll do, why don't I make it even easier, Colin? What we'll do, we'll put Colin's details in the show notes. Okay, so the show will be up on YouTube first thing next week. Pop onto YouTube. If you're new to Open Door, you can listen to all the back issues of it, lots of other guests on there, and including other visits for Colin. But Colin's contact details will be in the show notes, and you can reach out to Colin. If you're lucky enough to be one of our students, one thing that is coming up, which is quite exciting, Colin is going to join us at most of our Academy days coming up, and he will also be joining us at the Developers Club. So those of you that are coming to Developers Club, you'll see Colin next week. Those of you that are coming to our Academy days from April onwards, Colin was also going to be at those. So you'll get direct access to Colin every single Academy day. Yippee is a comment that's just come in from Jenny.
Woohoo!
Yeah, woohoo! I thought the same. Colin, exactly. Thank you for coming on. We've enjoyed it. It's been good fun, isn't it, Ian?
It certainly has. Great value as ever, Colin. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, guys.
Colin, that's a pleasure. We look forward, Colin. We're going to see you next week at the Developers Club on Tuesday. In fact, we're going to see you Monday night, I think, in the bar. And we'll have a couple of drinks with you and our students beforehand.
I hope so. Thank you ever so much.
Cheers, Colin. Thanks now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was good, wasn't it? As always. As always.
A load of golden nuggets.
Yeah, good stuff. If you did enjoy the show, as always, please pop it in the chat box. Tell us what you liked about the show. Tell us what you didn't like. We'll delete that one, of course. But tell us what you liked about the show. Give us any wonderful comments. Obviously, if you think I look like I've lost a bit of weight, Doral, thank you for that earlier, then please let me know. I certainly have not been in Greg's, as Ian suggested, although Dan seems to suggest in the chat box earlier that I had been in Greg's. And I did notice that Debs was having chicken and bacon for tea, which did sound quite nice, to be fair. Next week's show, if you are interested, is on Thursday the 24th at 7 o'clock. We might be doing a bit of an outside broadcast, but anyway, you have to tune in to see what's going on. If you are new to property and you want to come and join us for a free half-day session, I can't think why you'd want to spend more time with us, but if you would like to, just pop into on the link propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. Six-figure roadmap, that stands for. So that's /SFR, propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. It'll give you some selection of times that you can come and join us for a free half-day session, and we give you a real deep dive introduction into property to see what's going on. Completely free if you want to come and join us. Okay, shall we do a sign off and just see if there's any nice comments in the chat box on the way out, Ian? What do you think?
Yeah, let's have a see if you can find one.
Let me sieve through. Harjinder says, what a fantastic show. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great to have Colin on. Monifer says, fantastic day as always. A good end to my day, says Gary. Cheryl says, nice comment. Nice comment. I'm not sure what nice comment means. Oh, that's a nice comment in the chat box. Very funny, Cheryl. Yes. Very funny. I like that. That's quite cool. Great show, fellows. Very informative, as usual, says Patrick. Another great show, Property CEO with Colin, Ranjit from Property Investor News, getting another cheap plug. Always worthwhile. Thank you, guys, says Jenny. What a great show. Thanks, says Dan. Thanks, everyone, says Vanda. And finally, Gary says, absolutely loved it. Brilliant. Well, we thought it was brilliant as well, but that's just us saying that. Gary and everyone else, we'll see you all next week. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Cheers now. Bye-bye.